What's up, guys? Today, of course, I'll be discussing the support LMG in Battlefield 1 called the Huot Automatic Low Weight. There's only one variant of this weapon, as of course I mentioned, it's the low weight variant, which as of the fall patch, not only grants you a bipod, but it allows for the weapon's accuracy to grow faster with sustained fire. You have the options of iron sights or an AA iron sights for this weapon. And I'll discuss, of course, for this review, optimum strategies when using the weapon, and break down the synthic numbers to give you a better understanding of the weapon. You have to be support kit rank 10 to unlock it, and you'll need to spend 200 war bonds. Let's get to the stats. To start, the Huot Automatic Low Weight has a 475 round per minute fire rate, a 740 meters per second bullet velocity, a 12 meters per second squared gravitational constant, which means the further away at range you are shooting at the target, the more bullet drop you should see. But you almost certainly are not going to have a problem with that, because you shouldn't be anywhere near a range that you would see significant drop off when using this weapon. The magazine size for this weapon is 26 rounds. In terms of reload speeds, it will take 4.25 seconds to reload from completely empty and 2.85 seconds when there's a round left in the chamber. The damage chart states that it has a base damage of 21 up to 20 meters away, then it drops down to 15 damage at 35 meters and stays that way from 35 meters on. In Battlefield 1, the damage multipliers are 1.7 times for headshots, 1 times for upper body shots, and 0.96 for lower body, arms, and legs. In general, that makes the weapon a 5-shot body shot kill weapon inside of 20 meters, less obviously if you land a headshot or two, but outside of 35 meters it means it will take 7 shots to kill if you only hit body shots, so that's a pretty substantial amount of bullets you're going to need to land. In terms of recoil, the Huot has a 0.28 degrees of vertical recoil and 0.16 degrees of horizontal recoil, both to the left and to the right. No preference for left or right vertical or horizontal recoil. Of note, in comparison to the Bar 1918 and the Madsen MG, it has comparable vertical recoil, but substantially better horizontal recoil. This one has 0.16, as I stated, versus the other two that have 0.26 and 0.21. So it is substantially better that way. Also of note, because of the low weight variant, it has a great recoil decrease with sustained fire with a rating of 10, as expected, versus the other two weapons I previously listed, which have a rating of 6. So far so good in terms of recoil for this weapon. But we'll get to spread now, we'll evaluate it. The Huot has a 0.18 degrees of spread when aiming down sights and not moving, and 0.82 degrees of spread when aiming down sights and moving. As a point of comparison to the previous two weapons, the Bar and the Madsen, the spread for this weapon is significantly more per shot when aiming down sights and moving, with an average of about 0.3 degrees more, so that's something you really have to be wary of. When hip firing, standing, and not moving, you'll encounter 2 degrees of spread. When hip firing, standing, and moving, you will encounter 2.5 degrees of spread. So essentially it's not that surprising of news. You'll want to be as stationary as possible when shooting and aiming down sights to minimize spread as much as you can. This weapon has some of the higher overall spread amounts when moving and not moving compared to other support weapons in the game, and it takes a while to unlock. So take that as you will, as we're going to dive into this more in a second. So what ranges and situations does this weapon excel for best effectiveness? The weapon's best utilized, of course, according to the damage model, of 20 meters or so away. It has a very steep damage drop off down to 15 damage past 35 meters, and because of the very slow fire rate, medium range is basically that, it's that like 15 to 25 meter range is probably where it's going to be absolute best used. As noted earlier though, spread becomes very significant when moving, so ideally you'll want to be stationary when shooting, and even more ideally you should take advantage of the bipod that the low weight variants now give you. It will not be a good weapon to use when hip firing. It will not be a good weapon to use in short or medium range because of that significant spread, so I advise you to avoid doing this, as well as shooting on the move at all. Basically, movement is a significant problem with this weapon. If you're shooting it when you're moving, you're going to have extremely high spread values. You're going to win. So if you want to use the weapon, best effectiveness, stationary, inside of 15 to about 25-30 meters for best effect. The big question though, and this one's quite interesting, I'll get into it in a second. What's my rating and would I use it often? So again, you reach rank 10 as support. This one took a bit longer for me because I'm not normally a support player all that much. Awesome, a new weapon to play around with. It's going to be great, right? Nah, not at all. It's really strange what DICE did to choose with this weapon. So, logistically, as you'd expect in most FPS games, higher fire rate weapons typically get a lower overall damage per projectile to account for balance, and lower fire rate weapons such as this one you'd expect would receive a higher damage per bullet model. Instead, DICE decided that this weapon should get the lowest fire rate possible among LMGs, paired with the lowest possible damage model in the game of 21 max, 15 minimum, which is sort of bizarre. To hurt it even further, it only has a 26 round magazine, which is second last to the bar among support weapons. So you would expect that maybe this thing would have a large magazine size to compensate for the low fire rate and the low damage model, but it doesn't have that either. So as a result, weapons like the bar, the Madsen, the MG15, and maybe even some others will not only have a faster time to kill, larger magazines, and less spread, but they're going to be much better effective weapons. You can find success bipoded with this weapon inside of about 15 to 30 meters, but you can bipod all the other variants and do it even better. So, in general, I was extremely disappointed to reach the rank 10 support grind for this weapon. And even as full disclosure, I did look ahead at the stats on Symptic, and I sort of did spoil it for myself. But my suspicions were confirmed that it's not at all a weapon I would choose regularly. So, now that we've gotten it out of the way that I don't like this weapon and it has significant flaws, how would I address it? My first thing would be to do one of two things, maybe even both. The first thing is I would make the magazine size something like 40 or 50 instead of 26 because of that extremely low fire rate. And instead of, again, because of that extremely low fire rate, I'd probably buff the damage model up to maybe the 23 max and 17.5 minimum that the Madsen has. That way you have something that isn't by far the best support weapon, but it matches better up with its fire rate versus damage model as opposed to low fire rate, low damage model. It would balance it out better this way. Or if you're not going to change the damage model, at least I'd say buff the magazine size up to 50 plus or something like that. Something that gives it some appeal. The low fire rate means that the Madsen will be a much more viable run and gun style weapon, and the Huot would be stationary, hell-raising in its niche. So that would be my suggestions. The higher than average spread amounts with the Huot mean that it won't replace the other weapons, it would just bring them sort of up to their level. So as it stands, I'd say I'd maybe give this weapon a 5.5, 6 out of 10 as it stands. It's horrible moving around, and there's better options designed for stationary, even though that's what it was designed for, is stationary shooting. I can't honestly give you a logical reason to use this weapon other than the fact that, hey, it's a level 10 weapon. I will, of note though, revisit it in the future if there are changes. So that's the full disclosure. If you like the video, please leave a like, share it if you think someone would enjoy it, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Have a good one, YouTube.